Joe Root echoes all over Lords. What a sensational knock from one of England's greatest batters currently. His 26th Test century has given England a tense 5 wicket win at Lords, and it has prolonged New Zealand's agony at the home of cricket. Root, in the course of his 26th century, also became the second England player after Sir Alistair Cook to go past 10,000 Test runs. Yes, England have won by 5 wickets thanks to some brilliance from Joe Root. 26th Test century, and on top of that, joining Sir Alistair Cook as only the second England player to have gone past 10,000 runs. Cook has 12,400 plus runs, while Root has now entered this elite list. What a masterclass indeed from Joe Root. On a very tough pitch, especially overcast conditions on day 4, England have ensured that they have at least gotten their home campaign off to a great start under the new era of Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum. It is indeed, Netra, yeah, it is a fantastic achievement by Joe Root. Even when England were at their lowest ebb last year, it was Joe Root who held the England batting together. 1,700 Test runs in that calendar year, the highest by any England player. And by the way, England have chased down 277, which is incidentally the third highest successful chase at Lords in the fourth innings. West Indies achieved 344 for 1 in the 1980s. England, ironically, had also achieved a chase of 282 against New Zealand at Lords. That was in 2004 in what was Andrew Strauss's first test, as well as Nasir Hussain's farewell test. New Zealand, you may say, it has been a test of missed opportunities. They were already laid low when they lost 36 for 6 in the first innings. But Colin de Grandhomme ensured that they got over the line when he made 134. His knock ensured New Zealand's bowlers had something, because England, spectacularly in their first innings, lost plenty of wickets towards the end, and they managed only a 9-run lead. Daryl Mitchell and Tom Blundell were stitched a superb partnership. And that is how New Zealand were almost on the ascendancy in their second innings. Mitchell scored a ton. Blundell was nearing his century as well. But Stuart Broad's over, in which 3 wickets fell, 2 to Broad, 1 a run out, dramatically altered the entire match. After that, the New Zealand lower order just collapsed. And that is why England was set a target of 277 rather than a total which could have been 300 to 350 in that range. England also did not start well, losing their top order cheaply. But the luck of Lords smiles on Ben Stokes. Stokes was bold, but Colin de Grandhomme overstepped. He was given a life then. Just like in 2019, when Stokes led a very charmed life, he was caught on the boundary, but New Zealand fielders admitted that yes, it had touched the rope. Similarly here, 1 no ball, and that's it. Stokes hit a 50. Then Ben Foakes stepped into the picture, and he, along with Joe Root, ensured that England held their own. 61 runs were needed, 5 wickets today on day 4, overcast conditions, but 50 runs came in that first hour. Joe Root and Ben Foakes both decided to up the ante. Foakes in particular raised his scoring. So yes, he played the ideal foil to Joe Root. When he reached his 100, that too with his family in attendance, Joe Root finally ensured that England took a 1-0 lead in this series. So this test of missed opportunities primarily for New Zealand has given England the advantage. They have started their new red ball reset with some problems still persisting, but Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum will be very, very happy. In Fab 4, Root scored his 9th century in the World Test Championship cycle. Of course, Netra, Joe Root has been simply phenomenal. In that series against India, he hit centuries. He was yet again, frustratingly, I don't know what happens to Joe Root in Australia. He missed out on a century in Brisbane, and later on, he did not reclaim his West in the Ashes. So when Root has struggled in Australia, England has struggled. That's why from 2013 onwards till now, they have lost 13 out of the 15 tests that have been played there. So is New Zealand all but out of the World Test Championship cycle, Rudresh? Yes. This loss has all but dumped them out of the final race because New Zealand have two more tests after this, and then they have three away to Pakistan and three at home to Sri Lanka. So these five tests that are going to be played is very, very difficult because beating Pakistan 3-0 is very, very difficult. And on top of that, having to whitewash England in England, very few teams ever do that. So New Zealand, the defending ICC World Test champions, are all but out of the finals race this time. Maybe. Some results should go their way, but still very, very slim chances of New Zealand making it though. And any more comments? The contribution of Ben Stokes was also crucial. Well, yes, Ben Stokes and Ben Foakes both played crucial hands because Stokes reached a 50. He ensured that his aggression against Ajaz Patel took the bowling combination, which New Zealand relied on variety, that was out of the equation. Captaincy burden of Root, well, even when he was captain, I would say Joe Root still scored runs. So, in that way, Joe Root is simply one of the best in the business at this moment, especially in this ICC World Test Championship cycle. Can Root break Sachin's record of most test runs? Well, he's just reached 10,000 runs and he's only 31 years of age. If he plays for 4 more years, he might come close, but whether Root maintains this consistency is another story altogether. And this is called Joe Root's era, Parth Mishra Singh. Of course, this current 1.5 years that Joe Root has been in this England team, it's been his best period. Initially, before this period, Joe Root was accused of not converting his big starts into big hundreds. He would get 50s, but his conversion rate would be a big issue. Now, with this cycle from 2021 onwards till now, he's shown that he is one of the best in the business. Joe Root batting technique, please. Well, Joe Root, as you know, he employs a standard technique of playing the ball late and watching it very closely. He's not overly flamboyant like a Steve Smith, who's just all over the place with his technique, and of course, it's effective. Kohli, on the other hand, is flamboyant and he's an all-round player. So Joe Root's technique, Ronit Singh, is better. Well, in some conditions, yes. If you look at the England batting lineup now, technique-wise, Joe Root is one of the best in that side. But all-round play, I would say Virat Kohli is the greatest. Is he still in the ODI team scene, Radhan Pradhan? Well, we'll come to know whether he is in the ODI team scene because the ODI team has not been picked for the series against India. So, yes, Joe Root, let us not forget, he's got the most centuries there as an England player. So, in the ODI format, Joe Root is very, very underrated. So, I will just say that Joe Root currently is England's greatest test cricketer as of now. What do you rate the captaincy of Ben Stokes and Kane Williamson? I think Kane Williamson was undone by his batters not stepping up. Only Tom Blundell and Daryl Mitchell stepped up in the second innings. Secondly, there was no consistency. Even the captain would be disappointed that he could not lead from the front. The bowlers did their bit. But those two collapses, especially in the top order of the first innings and the lower middle order in the second innings, hurt Williamson immensely. As far as Ben Stokes is concerned, there are still problems. But fortunately for Stokes, his bowlers and his batters stepped up. And in the crucial fourth innings, Ben Stokes, Ben Foakes and Joe Root ensured that that middle order would help England win. So England's batters stepped up at the right time. Both sides, the bowlers stepped up. But unfortunately, there are still problems for both teams. New Zealand in particular, those collapses have to be restricted. Plus, they were saying that perhaps the inclusion of Neil Wagner would have made a difference. Neil Wagner, especially on pitches that do not give you that much of help, he's your workhorse, he could have done very well. So breaking news for people joining in right now, New Zealand have lost the Lord's Test and their agony at the home of cricket continues. 2019 ICC World Cup final, now this test loss. And on top of that, in 2021, they were lucky that they just escaped with a draw because Joe Root didn't go for the win at that time. Root has played around 20 tests more. Well, can Root break Sachin record? Well, there is still time for that. Root is only 31. And let us just ensure that he maintains that consistency and he plays more tests. traditionally England players don't play that much of tests past 35, 37. That is the trend. So whether Root reaches that landmark is very, very uncertain. But among the Fab Four now, currently in this ICC World Test Championship cycle, Joe Root is simply on a different level altogether. So New Zealand have plenty to ponder about in the second test that begins. Whether they'll make any changes. Can Kane Williamson overcome his wretched run? We will see all that. England, on the other hand, have begun red ball reset under the new era of Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum brilliantly. So they will be hoping that they seal a series win over New Zealand. And by the way, another stat which has just come up is that this is the first time after 5 years that England have actually won a test against New Zealand. In 2017, they lost 1-0 in New Zealand. Even in 2019, they lost 1-0. Even in 2021, they lost 1-0. So now they have finally managed to do it. Farid is saying Australia is the final frontier for Root now. Yes, absolutely. If he does well in Australia when they go there, hopefully he's there in 2025 when they go there for the Ashes. One hopes that Joe Root can finally break his duck, because in all conditions, Root has been supreme. But on the flattest conditions in Australia, where there's only a bit of extra bounce, it's surprising why Root has struggled. So do join us for the second test between England and New Zealand, folks. We will be there for all the live analysis. And so subscribe to Sports Today for all the latest news and analysis. We are also there on Facebook. Thank you.